Merry Christmas, everyone. You know, it's that time of year again. Family, presents.
And for a lot of folks, that means thinking about finances too, especially as retirement gets closer.
So true. And that's actually what our deep dive is all about today. We're going to unpack some changes coming to Social Security and Medicare in 2025.
Big stuff.
Yeah. So if you're getting close to retirement already, in those golden years, or even if you're just starting to think about the long haul, this one's for you, Samantha. I know it's not quite as exciting as unwrapping presents.
Well, maybe for some, but you're right, this stuff really matters.
It really does. Okay, so let's start with some good news. There's a CLA increase coming in 2025. Samantha, remind us what CLA is all about.
Sure, CLA stands for Cost of Living Adjustment. It's basically designed to help your Social Security benefits keep pace with, inflation. Think of it like a built-in raise to help keep your purchasing power steady.
Okay, so how much of a raise are we talking about here?
Well, for 2025, the CLA increase is set at 2.5%. So starting in January, you should see a little bump up in those monthly checks.
2.5%, not too shabby. But I did read somewhere that this is lower than CLA increases we've seen in the past few years. What gives, Samantha?
You're right. While 2.5% is decent, it is quite a bit lower than that 8.7% jump we saw back in 2023. And that's mainly because inflation has calmed down compared to last year.
So even though it's an increase, that smaller percentage might not go as far as folks are hoping, especially with prices still on the rise.
Yeah.
What should people be thinking about as they factor this into their budgets?
You hit the nail on the head there. If you're relying on those benefits to cover your expenses, that 2.5% might not cover those rising costs of groceries, utilities, you name it. It's all about adjusting your budget and being mindful of those price differences.
Awesome advice, Samantha. Thanks for breaking that down.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about the good news, the CLA increase, but you know there's got to be a but coming. What's the catch with Medicare in 2025?
You're catching on. There are some Medicare changes on the horizon that could be a challenge, particularly for those of you already on Medicare.
All right, Samantha, let's have it. What's changing?
Okay, well, the standard monthly premium for Medicare Part B, that's the part that covers most doctor visits and outpatient care, that's going up by 6%.
6%, that's a pretty hefty jump.
Yeah.
What does that mean in actual dollars for someone trying to manage their monthly expenses?
It means that premiums going from $174 to $185 each month. And keep in mind, for a lot of people, those premiums are deducted right from their Social Security checks.
So that CLA increase we were just celebrating, a good chunk of that could be eaten up by this higher Medicare premium. Ouch.
It's a bit of a wash, yeah. It's like getting a raise and then having your rent go up right after. You're not really coming out ahead. And it's not just the Part B premiums either. The deductible's going up too, from $240 to $257 in 2025.
Okay, definitely something to keep an eye on. We've talked about Part B, but what about the other parts of Medicare? Any changes there our listeners should know about?
There are. Actually, Medicare Advantage, also known as Part C, and Part D, that's the one for prescription drugs, they might actually see some decreases in costs. For instance, average Part D premiums are projected to drop to $40 a month in 2025, and many folks with Medicare Advantage plans won't see their premiums increase at all. There's even a new $2,000 cap on annual out-of-pocket costs for prescriptions kicking in that year, which is great news for anyone who needs those pricey medications.
Okay, some good news there. It sounds like Medicare is a bit of a mixed bag for 2025. So the bottom line is people really need to dig into their specific plan and see how it all shakes out for them personally.
Couldn't agree more. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. You got to understand how your individual plan's going to be affected.
Right. All right, so we've covered the COLA increase and the Medicare changes. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about full retirement age, or FRA. Samantha, there's a change coming in 2025 related to FRA, right? Can you explain what FRA is and why it's important?
Absolutely. So FRA, that's the age when you can claim 100% of your earned Social Security benefits. It's like the point where you get the full reward for all those years of work.
Got it. So what's changing in 2025?
Well, the FRA isn't a fixed number. It's been slowly creeping up over the years, and in 2025, it's going to be 66 years and 10 months for anyone born in 1959.
Okay, so if you were born in 59, got to wait until you're almost 67 to get the full benefits. What if someone wants to retire earlier? What are their options then, Samantha?
Well, you can actually claim those Social Security benefits as early as 62, but here's the catch, and it's a big one. Your monthly benefits will be permanently reduced if you claim before reaching that full retirement age.
So the earlier you claim, the smaller those checks are going to be. That's a pretty big trade-off to think about.
It is. Delaying those benefits, even just for a few months, could make a big difference down the line. And it's important to remember that FRA keeps increasing for those born after 59, too. Anyone born in 1960 or later full retirement age is 67.
So, Samantha, why is the FRA increasing in the first place? Seems a bit unfair to make people wait longer to get their full benefits.
It's a good question. It mostly comes down to demographics and the strain on the Social Security system. People are living longer these days, and with the baby boomers retiring, you've got more folks claiming benefits and fewer people working and paying into the system.
It's about keeping the system balanced and making sure it can keep running for future generations. So we've got the COLA increase, the Medicare changes, and the shifting full retirement age. But what about those folks who want to keep working even after they start collecting those Social Security benefits? Is that even allowed?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, you can work and receive benefits, but there's a catch, of course. It's called the earnings test.
The earnings test.
Yeah.
All right, Samantha, break it down for us. What's that all about?
Basically, if you're under your FRA and you're working, your benefits might be reduced depending on how much you're earning.
So you can have your cake and eat it too, but only a certain amount of cake, it sounds like.
Exactly. In 2025, the earnings limit is going to be $23,400. You can earn up to that without penalty. But if you go over, Social Security is going to hold back $1 in benefits for every $2 you earn above that limit.
So if you're thinking about early retirement but still want to work part-time, got to be really mindful of those earnings to make sure you're not missing out on benefits. Samantha, this is getting complicated.
I know, it can seem that way. But remember, once you hit your full retirement age, that earnings test goes out the window. You can work as much as you want without it affecting your benefits.
Okay, that's good to know. So far, we've talked about the COA increase, the Medicare changes, the full retirement age, and that tricky earnings test. But there's one more big thing we need to address, Samantha. What about the future of Social Security beyond 2025? I've been hearing some whispers about long-term solvency issues. What's the deal?
Yeah, that's a question on a lot of people's minds. Truth is, the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted in about a decade.
Depleted? Does that mean Social Security is going bankrupt?
Well, it's not quite that dramatic, but it does mean that without some changes, the program won't be able to pay out full benefits to everyone down the road.
I bet there are a lot of our listeners out there thinking, wait, hold on. I've been paying into this system my whole life. What's going to happen to my benefits? What would you say to those folks, Samantha?
I get it. It's concerning. It's important to understand that this isn't an immediate crisis. Benefits aren't going to vanish overnight. But it does mean lawmakers need to find some solutions to ensure the program can keep running for the long haul.
So it's a bit of a waiting game to see what happens. But it sounds like relying solely on Social Security for retirement income might not be the wisest move.
You're absolutely right. Planning for retirement with multiple sources of income has never been more important.
Okay, that makes sense. So Samantha, this has been a ton of information, a lot to digest.
I know, right? That's a lot.
All right, everyone, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about the CLAA increase, those Medicare changes, the full retirement age, and that earnings test. But before we jump into the next part, I want to leave you with this thought. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Whether it's from the Social Security Administration, a financial advisor, or even a trusted friend or family member, there are resources out there to help you navigate all of this.
I second that. There's no need to go it alone.
Exactly. We'll be right back after a quick break to talk about another crucial piece of the puzzle, taxes.
Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about some pretty big changes coming to Social Security and Medicare in 2025. And while it can seem a bit overwhelming, the good news is knowledge is power. The more you understand these changes, the better you can plan for your future.
Exactly. So Samantha, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's on a lot of people's minds when it comes to retirement. Taxes. Are Social Security benefits even taxable?
That's a great question. And the answer is, it depends. For some folks, Social Security benefits are totally tax-free. But for others, a portion of their benefits may be subject to federal income tax.
Okay, so how do you know if you'll have to pay taxes on your benefits?
It all comes down to your combined income. That includes your adjusted gross income, any non-taxable interest you have, and half of your Social Security benefits. If your combined income is below a certain threshold, your benefits won't be taxed.
So there's a magic number we need to stay under.
Yeah.
What are those income thresholds for 2025?
For single filers, if your combined income is below $32,000, your benefits are tax-free. For married couples filing jointly, the threshold is $44,000.
Got it. So if you're single and making less than $32,000 or a couple making under $44,000, you're in the clear. No Social Security taxes for you.
But Samantha, what if your income is above those thresholds? What happens then?
Well, Then it gets a little more complicated,
Mm.
depending on how much your income exceeds those limits. Up to 85% of your Social Security benefits could be taxable. Wow, 85%. That's a lot. So if you're in that higher income bracket, it's really important to factor those potential taxes into your retirement budget.
Absolutely. And remember, these thresholds can change from year to year, so it's always a good idea to check with the IRS or a tax advisor to make sure you have the most up-to-date information.
Good point. Samantha, taxes are always changing, aren't they? We've talked about federal taxes on Social Security, but what about state taxes? Do any states tax those benefits?
Yes, some states do. It really varies depending on where you live. Definitely something to consider if you're thinking about moving during retirement.
That's a great point. Taxes could actually play a role in deciding where you want to retire.
Okay, so we've covered Social Security benefits and taxes. What about Medicare? Are there any tax implications there?
Medicare itself isn't taxable, but there's one important tax-related thing to keep in mind: the Medicare Part B premium surcharge.
All right, Samantha. Another surcharge. What's that all about?
Basically, if your income is above certain limits, you'll have to pay a higher premium for Medicare Part B. Samantha, I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like the more you earn, the higher your costs and taxes are for both Social Security and Medicare.
That's right. The system is designed to provide more support for those with lower incomes.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of important changes coming in 2025, but what about the bigger picture, Samantha? You mentioned earlier that the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted in about a decade. What are the chances that the government will take action before then to address this issue?
That is the million-dollar question. The good news is, this is a widely recognized problem, and it's been a topic of debate in Congress for years. But the reality is, finding a solution that works for everyone is challenging.
So there's no easy fix. What are some of the ideas being tossed around to address this issue?
Well, there have been proposals to raise the retirement age, increase payroll taxes, and even change the way the COLA is calculated. Each of these options has its own pros and cons, and it's a complex issue with no simple answers.
Sounds like a lot of uncertainty for folks planning for retirement. What happens if the government doesn't act? What are the potential consequences?
The most likely outcome is that benefits would be reduced across the board. The exact amount is hard to say, but it could be substantial, especially for those who rely heavily on Social Security for their income.
That's definitely something to be concerned about. So what can people do now to prepare for this possibility, even if it's years down the road?
The key is to not put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify your retirement income sources. Don't solely rely on Social Security.
Okay, so what are some other options people should consider?
Make sure you're maximizing contributions to any employer-sponsored retirement plans, like 401k. Consider opening an IRA if you don't already have one. There are different types available, so research which one suits your needs best.
So having multiple streams of income coming in during retirement is crucial.
Exactly. And don't forget about other assets you might have, like a home rental properties or even a side business.
Samantha, what are some of the most common mistakes you see people making when they're planning for retirement?
One of the biggest mistakes is simply not planning at all. People put it off, thinking retirement is too far away to worry about. But the reality is, the earlier you start planning, the better prepared you'll be.
Procrastination is a dangerous game when it comes to retirement.
Absolutely. Another common mistake is underestimating how much money they'll actually need. Remember, retirement can last for decades, and costs can really add up, especially healthcare expenses.
That's a great point. What are some ways people can get a more accurate sense of their retirement needs?
There are lots of helpful retirement calculators online, including one on the Social Security Administration's website. You can input your current income expenses and estimated retirement age, and it will give you a ballpark figure, of course. These are just estimates. And working with a financial advisor can provide a more personalized and detailed plan.
So online tools are a good starting point, but getting expert advice is always a smart move. You mentioned the possibility of changes to how the COLA is calculated. Can you elaborate on that a bit, Samantha?
Sure, right now, the COLA is based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPIW. However, there's been debate about whether this accurately reflects the expenses that seniors typically face.
What's the problem with using the CPIW for calculating COA?
Well, some argue that it doesn't properly account for the spending patterns of seniors. For instance, seniors tend to spend a larger portion of their income on healthcare than the population measured by the CPIW.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all measure. What's the alternative?
There's another index called the CPIE, or Consumer Price Index for the elderly. This one specifically tracks the spending habits of households led by individuals 62 and older.
So is there any chance that this change will actually happen?
It's been discussed by lawmakers, but there's been no concrete action yet. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, as it could significantly impact the future of Social Security.
Okay. Yet another thing to watch. All this talk about COLA and potential benefit reductions makes me think about the other types of Social Security benefits out there. Can you give our listeners a quick overview of what else is available?
Of course. Besides the retirement benefits we've been focusing on today, there are survivor benefits for spouses and children of deceased workers, and there are disability benefits for those who can no longer work due to medical conditions.
Let's dive into those a bit more. What can you tell us about survivor benefits?
If a worker who paid into Social Security dies, their surviving spouse and dependent children might be eligible for monthly benefits. These are calculated based on the deceased worker's earnings record.
Are there any age restrictions for survivor benefits?
It depends. A surviving spouse can start receiving benefits as early as age 60, or even younger if they're caring for a child under 16 or a child with a disability.
So these benefits can be a real lifeline for families going through a tough time.
Absolutely. They can help ease the financial burden and provide some stability.
And what about disability benefits? Who qualifies for those?
If you've worked long enough and paid Social Security taxes, you might be eligible for disability benefits if you become disabled and are unable to work.
This is all really important information. We should definitely do a deep dive into these other types of benefits in a future episode.
I agree. We've only just scratched the surface today.
Okay, Samantha. This has been a marathon discussion about Social Security and Medicare. We've covered a lot of ground, and I know it can be overwhelming, but I hope our listeners are feeling more informed and empowered.
Me too. I think the key takeaway is that planning is absolutely crucial. Don't wait until retirement is right around the corner to start thinking about these things. The earlier you start, the more options you'll have, and the better prepared you'll be.
Absolutely. We'll be right back after a short break to tackle one more important topic that ties into all of this: long-term care.
Welcome back, everyone. We've covered a lot in our deep dive on Social Security and Medicare. But there's one more critical piece of the retirement puzzle we need to talk about.
You're right, Samantha. We can't talk about retirement planning without addressing the elephant in the room: long-term care. It's not the most fun topic, but it's definitely something everyone needs to think about as they plan for their future.
Absolutely. Long-term care refers to a whole range of services and support that you might need if you're unable to perform everyday tasks, due to aging, illness, or disability.
So we're talking about things like help with bathing, dressing, eating, or even more intensive medical care.
Exactly. And the costs associated with long-term care, well, they can be significant. It's not something most people can easily cover out of pocket.
Yeah, I've heard some pretty scary statistics about the cost of nursing homes. Samantha, can you give us an idea of just how expensive this stuff can be?
It really depends on where you live and the level of care you need. But just to give you an idea, the national median cost for a private room in a nursing home is over $100,000 per year. And assisted living facilities, which provide a bit less intensive care, can still cost tens of thousands of dollars each year.
Wow, those numbers are definitely eye-opening. So the big question is, how do people plan for these potential expenses? Does Medicare cover long-term care?
That's where things get a little tricky. Medicare doesn't actually cover most long-term care services. It primarily focuses on short-term skilled nursing care or rehab after a hospital stay. And even then, there are some pretty strict eligibility requirements and limits.
So Medicare is not really a reliable solution for long-term care needs. What other options are out there?
One option is long-term care insurance. These policies are specifically designed to help cover the cost of various long-term care services, including nursing home care, assisted living, and in-home care.
Okay, Samantha, long-term care insurance. Break that down for us. How does it work? And what should people think about before buying a policy?
Sure, so essentially you pay a monthly premium, and if you end up needing long-term care services down the road, the policy will cover a portion of the costs. But it's really important to understand that long-term care insurance can be pricey, and the coverage itself can be pretty complex. You really need to carefully review those policy details, including the benefit period, daily benefit amount, and any waiting periods or exclusions.
It sounds like choosing a long-term care insurance policy is a pretty complicated decision. What are some other strategies people can consider for covering these costs?
Well, some folks explore options like Medicaid planning, which basically involves structuring their assets so they can qualify for Medicaid coverage of long-term care. But Medicaid has pretty strict eligibility requirements based on income and assets, so it's crucial to talk to an elder law attorney who specializes in this area.
Medicaid planning, got it. Any other strategies you recommend, Samantha?
Absolutely. It's also a good idea to think about long-term care planning as part of your overall retirement saving strategy. This might mean setting aside funds specifically for future care needs or exploring investment options that are designed to grow your savings over time.
So thinking about long-term care isn't just something you do when you're about to retire. It's a crucial part of planning for your financial future, even when you're younger.
Exactly. The earlier you start planning, the more options you'll have, and the better prepared you'll be to face whatever challenges come your way.
Samantha, we've covered some pretty heavy and complex topics today. From COLA increases and Medicare premiums to the future of Social Security and the importance of long-term care planning, it's a lot to take in.
It really is. But I hope our listeners are walking away with a sense of empowerment and information, ready to take control of their retirement journey.
I agree, Samantha. And I think the most important thing we've learned today is that knowledge is power. The more you understand about these programs and the potential challenges ahead, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions and plan for a secure and fulfilling retirement.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, everyone, retirement isn't just about finances. It's about creating a future where you can truly enjoy your golden years. Pursue those passions, spend time with loved ones, and embrace all that life has to offer.
So true. As we wrap up this episode, we encourage you to take what you've learned today and start planning for that future. Don't be afraid to reach out to financial advisors or other trusted professionals who can help you navigate all the ins and outs of retirement planning.
And remember, folks, it's never too early or too late to start taking charge of your financial well-being. With careful planning and a proactive approach, you can create a retirement that's both secure and fulfilling.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Social Security, Medicare, and long-term care. We hope you found it informative and helpful as you start planning for your retirement. Until next time, happy planning and happy holidays.